What if you could go back to the early days of the internet and be one of the world's first web developers or buy Bitcoin at a dollar? Well, unfortunately, I can't give you a time machine, but I can give you the next best thing. See, blockchain is growing twice as fast as the internet was in the 90s, and it's still early. And while everyone else is betting on the next big coin, the real developers are building, and they're getting paid handsomely to do it. And while everybody else is freaking out about the crypto markets going down, blockchain developers are still getting paid handsomely to build the next generation of the internet. Like my student Mike, who just landed a senior software engineer role at Coinbase. If he was waiting for the crypto market to turn around, he would have never landed that position. And while everyone thinks that, buying crypto is the secret to making in this industry, the real spoils are going to the builders, the ones who actually make the tech. Because the last thing you want to do in life is focus on things you can't control, like whether the price of Bitcoin is going up or down. But what you want to focus on is what you can control, your own skills and how you put them to use. And that's the absolute best investment that you can make is in yourself and in your own skills, because you don't have to time the market and you can get an ROI for life. And you make money all the time, whether Bitcoin goes up and down, left, right, sideways, doesn't matter. And in many ways, if you become a blockchain developer, you're going to get what most people are actually looking for in crypto, life-changing money. Think about it. Most people think that they have to pick some hot coin in order to accomplish things like, setting themselves up for retirement, buying a home, paying off debt, or providing for a family. But if you become a blockchain developer, you can accomplish all of that without praying that the market goes in your favor. And on top of that, you get the opportunity to work remotely from wherever you want, whether that's on your couch in your pajamas or while you're traveling to some exotic destination on the other side of the world. And you get to work with one of the most exciting tech trends of our lifetime, building the next wave of the internet. And so if that sounds good to you and you're ready to level up your career so that you can become a highly paid blockchain developer in 2026, then listen up, because that's the exact reason that I created the Blockchain Developer Bootcamp, the ultimate step-by-step training that's going to turn you into a blockchain master. And I'm having a massive Black Friday discount this weekend only, where you can get this for 77% off so you can master these skills in no time. This is one of the biggest discounts I ever offer on a training like this, and you can claim it with a link down below until December 2nd. All right, so let me show you what's inside this Black Friday bundle. So it's going to include my flagship training, the Blockchain Bootcamp 3.0, but it's also going to include a bunch of other free bonuses, 3 free bonuses, in fact, and I'm going to go through each of those right now. So the main part of the bundle is my flagship training, the Blockchain Bootcamp 3.0. This is going to show you everything you need to know on how to become a blockchain master from scratch. This is the training that I wish that I had when I first got started, and it's the same one I've used to help lots of other people become professional blockchain developers. So inside the bootcamp, we show you everything you need to know to become a blockchain master from scratch. We start with the fundamentals, like what is blockchain, how do smart contracts work, what is consensus, etc., etc. And then we quickly move on to the meat of the bootcamp, which is building out the capstone project. This is where you learn all the programming languages you need to know by building a real world project. So this is a decentralized cryptocurrency exchange where you can actually trade real world cryptocurrencies. And when you do this, you're going to learn all the hottest technologies like Hardhat, Solidity, Ethers, Node.js, and you're even going to see how to leverage the power of AI into your workflow to become, the kind of developer you need to be in 2026 and beyond. And then on top of that, we're also going to do an entire section of the bootcamp after that devoted to Solana technology, which is another hot programming field for blockchain developers. All right, so now let's talk about the bonuses. So bonus number 1 is the Flash Loan Masterclass. In this class, you'll learn how to borrow millions of dollars in crypto
and I'm thrilled to have you here today. Our session is designed to explore the fascinating dynamics of the silver market, especially in light of recent volatility and price projections. By the end of our time together, you'll understand the key drivers behind silver prices, current trends, and future expectations. Let's embark on this learning journey together. Learning objectives. 1. Understand current silver pricing and projections. 2. Identify market dynamics influencing silver prices. 3. Recognize shifts in purchasing behavior as prices rise. Present step-by-step. 1. Current silver pricing. Current price. As of our last recording, silver is trading around $93 to $94 per ounce. Immediate target. Experts anticipate reaching $100 imminently, potentially within days. 2. Yearly projections. Current year expectation. Projections suggest silver could rise to at least 150, with potential highs up to 300. Long-term scenarios. Some analysts propose extreme cases where silver could exceed $600 or even reach $500,000 under severe market conditions. 3. Market dynamics. Gold-silver ratio. Currently at 49:1, with expectations to tighten further to 40:1 or 35:1. Physical shortages versus paper markets. A disconnect between physical demand and paper markets is causing significant market shifts. Retail psychology. As prices rise, consumer demand for silver increases. Simplify and clarify. Let's break this down further. Why is silver rising? Investors are moving away from traditional assets and looking for safe havens like silver. What does the gold-silver ratio mean? It indicates how much gold can be bought with a certain amount of silver. A lowering ratio suggests silver is undervalued compared to gold. What are physical shortages? This refers to the actual availability of silver for purchase, which is becoming increasingly limited. Encourage active participation. I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the projected prices of silver? Have you noticed any trends in your local markets? Let's engage in a discussion about your observations and experiences. Pause for discussion and feedback. Address questions proactively. I anticipate some questions may arise regarding what are the implications of moving to fractional silver? As prices increase, smaller denominations like half-ounce coins may become more popular among investors. How might liquidity concerns affect selling? High prices could lead to local shops struggling to buy back large amounts of silver, incentivizing investors to hold on to smaller units. If you have any questions now, please feel free to ask or share your concerns.
Welcome. This is Daniel Diaz, your host of Sound Money Matters with Rob Keens. And we are here actually at our coin store, my coin store, Sovereign Gold and Silver Exchange. And we decided to stop by, and we're actually going to talk about what's going on in the silver markets and what we expect to happen in silver and gold in the future. Rob?
Yeah, lots of fun, man. We're doing a lot of business here in the coin store, and what we're seeing is the cool thing that we're seeing is we're seeing people come up and say, "Hey, a friend of mine talked about silver." You know, one guy said, "Well, I overheard somebody at a restaurant," and I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." Came in and bought a few silver coins. We have people that have no idea about the monetary value of gold and silver, monetary history, but they're buying gold and silver. So I think, Daniel, we're probably at the beginning of a retail crowd coming into it. And that's funny to say. We're sitting at what, $93 silver today, almost 94. I think it topped out like 93.50 or something. And we're not even into the big retail rush here in the US. And I think that's a big sign that we got a long ways to go. And I think last week I said at least $150 silver this year. We were talking earlier about Bank of America, maybe 309 is their target. So silver could go anywhere this year. It could keep going. It's approaching, what was it, a 49-1 on the gold silver ratio. I mean, It could keep going to where you get a 40-1, maybe even a 35-1.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like silver is going to stop. And the big question is, like the CME group, you know, if you watch my channel, you guys listen to me all the time, talk about margin hikes and what the COMEX is doing. And they're raising the margin on contracts where the spot price is determined on that paper market to slow down the number of contracts that come in. They've also put out 100-ounce new product, 100-ounce product, designed to absorb some of that retail demand for smaller players in the market. In other words, what's happening was the big banks were putting so much short paper on the market, it wasn't doing anything. They have a smaller contract with a little bit higher margin to entice smaller players in. They're trying to get people in to that trade to slow that price down. And those are some pretty big moves. And that's an indication that they can't control, this bull market, what's going on. Last thing before I turn it back over to you, China, I think, peaked at $9 to $10 over spot. It went over $100 US per ounce of gold. It was about $10 higher than what we were trading here in the US. So definitely robust physical silver demand. The COMEX and the CME group that runs that, responding to that with several measures to slow that down and to absorb some of that demand on the derivative market and to get that price down. But I think what we're seeing across the pond in China, what we're seeing with potential shortages in London due to people putting so much money in the ETFs and gobbling up all that free silver in London, is we're getting real close to that big squeeze condition in the physical. And if that happens, all bets are off. Silver could go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because it's an industrial commodity and people need it. It's not, like gold, you can you can talk people into going to other things, because gold is used in industry, but in jewelry and in computers and stuff like that, electrical connections, but it's not demanded or required like silver for everything. If, we see issues in physical silver shortages across the world, then silver could go to any price because the world needs it. I mean, you could be looking at $500, $1,000 silver at some point when we get to that shortage. I don't think we're at a shortage yet. What we've seen is that there is a refinery glut here in the U.S. There's so much selling in the U.S. because people are taking advantage of the high prices that the refiners are basically at limit. They can't take anymore. And that's, why you see silver prices going up on like generic coins and bars, $9, $10 an ounce if you're at APMEX or JM Bullion or those guys. But I do think that there is silver there. It needs to be refined. So I think at some point, we're not out of silver yet, but we're getting close to that point. And I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but I think it's very possible that we, Bank of America has a $309 target. We may hit $300 silver. I mean, who knows? And it's just, I've been in this 16 years. I've never seen a run on gold and silver prices like I've seen the last 2 years. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah, it's what North Star Bad Charts calls a super capital rotation event, and it's only happened once before. And what that means for those who have heard that first time hearing that term is that people are selling all their investments, their stocks, their bonds, real estate, and they're pouring everything into precious metals. So it's multiple sides of pressure, right? You got pressure from the bullion banks that are running out of metal or low on metal. Then you have what's going on around the world geopolitically, what's going on in Venezuela, what's going on in Iran, what's going on with Russia, and then Greenland, and even Europe with Russia. A lot of things are happening. So there isn't just the inflation component of the run. There's also people fleeing their assets for safe haven assets, which has always been gold and silver. And so there's so many different things that are attributing to these increases and the skyrocketing. I think the biggest thing is the inflation, right? Because gold and silver for millennia, every single nation that has done a fiat currency, this is the first time it's been global, but every other region or nation that has had a fiat currency, gold and silver has always acted as an accounting measure to the amount of currency in circulation. And with the stimulus checks, with the inflation, or the quantitative easing from 2024, look, from 2020 to 2022, I believe that 2-year period, the U.S. printed 40% of all currency ever printed in U.S. history in just those 2 years. 40% of all currency. So it takes a minimum of 6 months for new currency or new debt to circulate into the economy, up to a few years, and we're at that point. And we're at about 3 years. 3 years when they started doing the quantitative easing, we started seeing the bull market in gold, now silver, and it's just acting as an accounting measure. And I think with everything that's going on, we're going to see, look, it's January 14th. I think we can see $100 ounce of silver by Friday. I mean, this is airing Friday, so I'm trying to predict. Today is Wednesday. If it hits $100 by Friday, then great. I was right. If not, I think it's going to hit it next week, because just last week it was in the high 70s. It was like it closed on Friday at 79. Right, we're at 93.
The beginning of December on the 5th, I did, and the reason I remember this is because I did a large deal in silver. We did a single trader did about $500,000 through the Kinesis store. That was an arranged trade that we wanted to make for them. They're a good customer of ours, and I think that we closed that at something like $55, $57 silver, and we're not quite nearing double in the span of 5-ish weeks. But it's pretty darn close.
Yeah.
Never in the history of silver trading since 1974 in the Commodities Act have we had that kind of move. Now, we've had moves. If you go back to 79, 80, we had a big move when we had that big stress because of high interest rates. Mm-hmm. You know, 2009 to 2011, we saw silver go up to about 49, almost 50 on a candlestick chart, closed at 49 something on the day. You know, those were big moves. This is almost a doubling in 5 weeks. That is completely and utterly unprecedented.
Yeah.
And the run in gold the last 18 to 24 months has also been unprecedented. And if you look at, as Daniel said, all of the factors, it's like it's lining up to where all of the factors matter. You've had central banks buying gold like mad since 2011. 2025 was the most bought in the history of central bank purchasing. The history, that year was the highest year. So gold has been gobbled up. Yeah, people buying gold. The rush to gold is in because look at the prices. And it's funny, there was a meme that I put out on Twitter where it showed $20 silver, nobody lining up to buy it. You know, $80 silver, a few people lining up to buy it. $100 silver, you had to line out the door. That psychology of every market, stock market, houses, whatever, as the price goes up, people rush in. And we're not even to that point of where most of retail's rushing in. But you got the geopolitical concerns, you've got the shortages in silver, you've got central bank buying of gold. So we've seen issues in London and now coming to the US and the industrial markets where they're not able to deliver. People are standing for delivery. It's been shown that in January, several times this month, and this is unheard of since I've been following this for 16 years, that in January, people are pulling futures contracts into the current month. Usually, as you go further into the month, people roll those contracts over into the future. It's a futures market. They're playing what the price will be in the future. People are rolling contracts backward into January at like 5,000 a day in silver, trying to stand for delivery. And it costs a lot of money to do that. And they're trying to stand for delivery. And the risk is that they get stopped out of that contract because there's a time as a factor. They would rather take that risk of loss on the derivative side of the trade to try to stand for delivery. And JP Morgan has been selling a ton of their physical silver stock when you look at the physical stock reports available on NYMEX. I've never, in 16 years, I've never seen that in the gold or the silver market. And, we're not at a real silver squeeze shortage just yet. We still see scrap coming in. We still see some of the big online dealers having the stock. But when you go $10 over spot on generic coins and bars or private mint coins and bars, and they're pretty bars, nothing wrong with them. It is the last product that gets bid up, and it's been bid up. You're 2 months out on American Silver Eagles. They can't print them. Maple Leafs are starting to go unobtainium. They can't print them fast enough. And, the junk silver is doing very well, constitutional silver. And now the private mint coins and bars are $10 over spot. Definitely a lot of retail demand. And because of the constraints on the refiners, they can't get it out fast enough.
Yeah.
So those premiums are going to continue to widen. I've never, in 16 years, I've never seen a market like this on the industrial markets that determine spot prices or on the physical markets. And we haven't even gotten to the big retail rush. I mean, we're having sales and people are just now the first timers are starting to get into it, but we haven't had the big retail rush yet. And we're sitting almost at $100 silver. I've never seen it. I've been 16 years. I've never seen this before.
Yeah. And, we're starting to see silver become unobtainium, right? It was always silver. People that didn't really have the money to buy gold has fled to and stacked. But now we're looking at $100 ounce silver, and people who really can't afford $100 ounce. Like I have a couple people that were buying, 2 to 3 ounces when they were $30, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of their limit. Now they're down to 1 ounce.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to see in the near future is we're going to see a rise in the stacking of fractional silver.
Oh, yes.
A half ounce silver is the same price as an ounce of silver 3-4 months ago before the run, right? We're looking at like $40 and $45 for a half ounce. And I think we're going to see a gravitation towards fractional because silver, as Mike Maloney is saying, is going to become unobtainium.
Mhm.
It's going to be when silver hits $200-300 an ounce, it's going to be less selling of ounces. We're going to start seeing ounces just sitting there. Obviously, people of high net worth are going to continue to stack ounces, but I think we're going to start moving. And I'm advising customers like, look, if gold hits $10,000 an ounce, is a question that I get all the time. What's going to be selling? Look, historically, American Gold Eagles, Maples, Krugerrands, they will sell. But if it's $10,000 an ounce, now you have a liquidity problem if you bring it to a coin shop. Because if you have a small coin shop, you bring in 10 ounces of silver, 10 ounces of gold. I mean, a lot of coin shops don't have 100K cash sitting there. There might be, we might start seeing more checks cut. But look, it's going to get to a point where I think I advise them, instead of buying an ounce, I'm moving towards quarter ounces, half ounces. Because even if it's a $10,000 ounce, you can bring in 10 half ounces, and it's 50 grand. That a lot of coin shops should have that available. But I think fractional is going to be where we're heading. Even 2.5 gram bars, which Kinesis makes, 5 gram bars, 1 gram bars, and rounds too. Do you guys make half ounce rounds?
Yeah, we've got a half ounce gold proof quality round coming to the store, and we're talking about doing like half ounce silver. And I never thought that I would sell a half ounce silver. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but at these price points, again, it's all some people can afford.
Yeah.
And the other thing that Kinesis has in their store are the arms. So we've got arms, just the same manufacturer as Goldback, on theirs. We have ours in the store as well. And sales of those have started to really go up. People are buying sets of the different 5 denominations we have. They're buying singles. Right now we have free shipping on everything just to help people get into it. So we don't charge you shipping. We don't charge you packaging. It gets sent, FedEx, insured with delivery, to your door. And if you want to get into fractional gold, those bills are a good way to get into it.
Yeah.
And then what we're trying to do is get the fractional gold bars back, and we're trying to print them as fast. Every time I get gold in the store, it's gone because the wholesalers that we trade with buy it before I can get it up on the store.
Yeah.
They sit there and look at the way they must F5 10 times a day. And as soon as I get gold in the store, it's gone. So we're ramping up, our manufacturing of gold. We're doubling and tripling. And on the silver, I think we are going to go to fractionals. We're talking about doing fractional designs, beautiful designs. Kinesis has some of the best designers in the world. We've got 6 designs sitting there we've never debuted. We think that we're going to pop those out. And I'm thinking instead of doing 1 ounce coins, we may do half ounce silver, and that may be our biggest seller. So we're definitely responding to that. And you're right, it's crazy. It's just a crazy market. And it's good because it's those people that have been stacking. I tell the story a bunch of times. Guy came into my store about 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago now. And he came in, he was mad. It was during the summertime, and he had a monster box of maples. And he's like, I want to trade this for platinum. And I said, I don't know if I can get you platinum, because platinum is hard to get in package form. Manufacturers can get it, but getting it in coin and bar form is hard because there's a scarcity due to it being used in catalytic conversions and stuff. Not a lot of retailers had it. I went to my wholesalers and I couldn't find enough, and he got pissed. And he's like, Rob, I want to go into platinum. This silver thing's not going anywhere. Well, I hope he kept that monster box of maples, because he quadrupled his money. It was sitting at $21 when he came into a store and threw it down on the ground on my counter and said, I'm pissed off about silver not running. It's gone up for $21 to, what is it, 93 something today.
Yeah.
Whoever you are, you're out there, I don't remember your name. I hope that you listened to my advice and kept it, because you 4.5x'd your money in the span of about 2.5 years. And we're not done yet, Daniel, because the pent up demand for silver, it's industrial with the shortages that we know the last 5 years from the mine, but it is also Now the monetary demand's coming in. What does David Morgan always said? When that monetary demand comes in, silver's going to run.
Yeah.
And, you know, David Morgan has many times on my channel said maybe $600 silver. That's not a recommendation. You do your own research. But what if we got to $600 silver? You know,
It's possible. I
I may be minting 1/10 ounce
yeah.
silver coins just to help people out. I mean, I don't know where this is going. You guys leave comments and down below, by the way, and tell me what you want to see in the Kinesis Mint. We have the ability to produce new designs, new sizes and shapes of coins and bars. So we're going to have half-ounce gold coming. We're working on quarter-ounce gold. We're doing that design process now, making the tools and the dies and all that to mint it. And I'm thinking about doing fractional silver as well. Put down in the comments what you guys want to see, and we'll make sure we put some of that over here in Daniel's store as well. Keep him flush with that kind of stuff for those of you guys that need to buy fractional. And again, come to Daniel's store. It's 1128 US Highway 1 here in Sebastian. He's doing great business. I was here helping him all morning. I didn't think he was going to put me to work. I thought we were going to show up and do some videos. He had so many customers in his store. It was like the old days. I was breaking out the acid test kits. We were buying jewelry. Yeah. We were buying coins. We were selling coins. It was a lot. It brought back the old days. It was so much fun. Yeah. I got to crack out the numismatic book. It's like, man, it's been a long time since I looked at that, you know. But I had a guy bring in a little. It was a little clasp, on a gold chain, 18 karat gold, and I bought that. Yeah. And it was just a tiny little clasp. It was worth $40 or $50. And I'm telling you, if people are buying little flakes of gold, they're bringing it in. Yeah. It's just that price is bringing out all of that pent up family heirloom stuff. And we were talking Saturday. We were at the fun show in Orlando. Yeah. And we headed over to Red Lobster to do some private business. And we were talking to a guy that does coins and scrap, all forms of scrap here, you know, around the Florida area, around the Orlando area. And they're buying, you know, the 1/5 and 1/10 gold, where you have heavy gold plating on some other metal. Mm-hmm. Well, now we're melting that down to get the gold off of gold plated items. Gold plated items.
We paid the silver price for heavy plate, gold plate.
For a heavy gold plate. It's insanity. Anything that has any gold in it is being processed through the system. Yeah. Okay. So that should tell you what the demand currently is.
Yeah. And, you know, this is going to be a short episode because, like Rob said, we thought we're going to be recording early in the day, but it was nonstop. Yeah. And I have a call with the board of the Sound Money Trade Association in 3 minutes. So we're going to be ending this here shortly. Any last comments before we wrap up the show?
Stay tuned to Citizens for Sound Money channel. C4SM is coming out with so many innovations, not only to educate and do legislation, but to help you in the market. And the Sound Money Trade Association is going to be at the heart of that. Big announcements coming soon. And just for information, come over to the Freedom Report on my channels. Everything's free. Okay. So on my channels, I'm just trying to help people out. And we're going to follow every step of this process. And come to his store in Sebastian. He's here every day and he will help you out if you've got questions and educate you and help you out if you're a first timer. If you're a first timer, you're learning about sound money, come down to Sovereign Gold and Silver Exchange here in Sebastian.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, guys. And God bless. We'll see you at the next Sound Money Matters. And on Tuesday, Sound Money Matters Live.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we start these conversations, we are looking at, you know, a PDF or a chart or maybe a news article on a screen. It's sterile. It's quiet.
Very quiet.
But today,
wait.
Today, we are going somewhere a little different. I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine walking into a shop, but not just any shop.
No, definitely not your average retail experience.
Right. Imagine walking into a coin shop right now. You might picture, I don't know, a dusty little antique store, maybe a guy in the back reading a newspaper. Silence.
The ticking of a clock, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But the source material we are diving into today, a discussion from Sound Money Matters recorded live at the Sovereign Gold and Silver Exchange, paints a completely different picture. It's loud, it's chaotic, phones are ringing off the hook.
People shouting buy and sell orders.
There's a line of customers out the door. It's frantic.
It sounds more like the floor of the New York Stock Exchange in the 1980s than a local coin shop. And that energy is actually the first data point we need to look at.
That is exactly where I want to start, because we aren't just talking about numbers on a screen today. We are talking about a feeling, a shift. The source material brings up this concept of the restaurant test.
Yes.
It's such a simple idea, but it really stuck with me.
It is a classic sentiment indicator. The restaurant test, or the cocktail party theory, basically says that when an asset class is dead, nobody talks about it.
Mm,
But when you start overhearing random conversations at a diner, or the barista at your coffee shop is asking about silver prices,
that's when you know.
that is when you know that psychology has shifted from niche interest to public mania.
And according to our source, we are right on the precipice of that mania. We are seeing people who have never bought a coin in their lives walking into shops because they heard a whisper.
Just a whisper.
And frankly, if you look at the spot price mentioned in the recording, you can see why. We need to talk about this number because it honestly made me do a double take. They're talking about silver hovering between $93 and $94 an ounce.
It is a staggering number. Just hard to wrap your head around if you've been watching this market for a while.
Okay, let's unpack this because for the longest time, silver was this sleepy asset. It sat at $20. Maybe it went to 25, but $94?
And climbing.
And with predictions of hitting $100 basically any day now, we aren't talking about pennies and nickels moving here. We are talking about a historic run.
We are. And to understand the gravity of $94, you have to look at the velocity. It's not just that it's high, it's how fast it got there.
Right. The speed is the scary part.
Yeah.
Or the exciting part, depending on your position.
Exactly. Our source material highlights that silver almost doubled in value in a span of about 5 weeks. Think about that. 5 weeks.
From where to where again?
It went from the mid 50s, so roughly $55 or $57, all the way up to 94.
Hold on, let me play devil's advocate here. Markets are volatile. I mean, crypto does that all the time. Is a 2x move in 5 weeks really that unprecedented for a commodity?
For silver, absolutely. If you look back at the history books, even the legendary runs, the Hunt brothers in 1980 or the massive spike we saw in 2011, they didn't have this specific kind of condensed velocity.
What did it top out at in 2011?
In 2011, silver topped out around $50. We are nearly double the previous all-time high, and we did a huge chunk of that move in just over a month. The experts in the source material say this is unprecedented since the 1974 Commodities Act.
So in the modern trading era, we have literally never seen a move like this.
Never. And it's acting differently than gold, which is key. We track this metric called the gold-silver ratio.
Right.
It measures how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold. Historically, that number bounces around, often hovering wildly.
Yeah.
But right now, it's approaching 49 to 1.
Which means silver is getting more expensive relative to gold. It's catching up.
Significantly. And the expectation mentioned in the discussion is that it could tighten even further down to 40 to 1 or even 35 to 1. That tells us that silver is outperforming gold. It's the race car passing the luxury sedan.
So that brings us to the mission of this deep dive. We have to answer the question, why? Why now? And why this fast? The outline introduces this term that sounds like something out of a Marvel movie, the super capital rotation.
It does sound dramatic, doesn't it? The term was coined or, popularized by Norse bad charts, and it's referenced heavily in our source. But it's actually a very practical description of a massive financial event.
So break it down for me. What does a super capital rotation actually look like? Are we just talking about day traders getting bored of tech stocks and buying mining companies?
No, this is much, much bigger than day traders.
Yeah.
Think of the financial world as an ocean. You have the massive whales pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, insurance companies, institutional capital. For decades, these whales have been parked in the safe harbor of government bonds and, to some extent, the stock market.
That's where the real money is.
That's where the trillions of dollars live.
Right. The classic 60-40 portfolio. You buy your treasuries, you buy your S&P 500, and you go to sleep.
Exactly. But what this super capital rotation suggests is that the harbor isn't safe anymore. The water is rising, or maybe the water is on fire. So that capital isn't just looking for a slightly better return. It is looking for a lifeboat.
A lifeboat.
And the source highlights that we are seeing liquidity draining out of traditional investments, stocks, bonds, real estate, and trying to squeeze into the tiny, tiny bucket that is the precious metals market.
I like the bucket analogy because the bond market is what? Trillions?
Hundreds of trillions globally. It's almost incomprehensibly large.
And the silver market?
Billions, low billions. It's like trying to pour the entire Atlantic Ocean into a swimming pool. When even a tiny fraction of that super capital rotates out of paper assets and tries to enter the physical metal market, the price of the metal doesn't just go up.
It explodes.
It explodes. That is the mechanism we are seeing.
But why flee the harbor? What's wrong with the bonds? I mean, this is supposed to be the safest thing on the planet.
That brings us to the elephant in the room, the one thing that eats bonds for breakfast: inflation.
We hear that word constantly, but the numbers in the source material, they were frankly startling. They mentioned a statistic about the printing press that I want to make sure everyone hears clearly.
You're referring to the statistic that between 2020 and 2022, the United States printed 40% of all the currency in its entire history.
40% in 2 years. I mean, we lived through it, but hearing it aggregated like that it's just insane.
It is. And this is the root cause of the rotation. You have to understand the lag effect. When a government prints that much money, it doesn't cause hyperinflation the next morning. It takes time for that money to slosh through the system.
It's like a python swallowing a pig.
That's a great analogy. You see the lump moving slowly down the body.
And we are the python, or the economy is.
Yeah. The economy is the python. The sources suggest it takes anywhere from 6 months to a few years for that new currency to really impact prices and psychology. Well, do the math. We are now roughly 3 years past that massive printing spree.
We're in the impact zone.
We are in the impact zone. The pig is being digested.
So gold and silver are basically acting as the scorecard, the measure of that digestion.
Precisely. They're the accounting measure for the excess liquidity. When you flood the world with dollars, the price of finite assets, things you can't print, like gold and silver, has to rise to balance the books. It's the market's way of saying there are too many dollars and not enough ounces.
And the super capital rotation is just the big money finally waking up to that.
Is the big money finally realizing that the math doesn't work anymore?
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you'd think, okay, price goes up, investors are happy, the market adjusts, but it's not that smooth, is it?
Not at all.
There is a battle going on behind the scenes. The big boys, the banks, the exchanges, they aren't just sitting back and letting silver go to the moon.
No, absolutely not. If silver goes to the moon, it breaks a lot of things. It signals a loss of confidence in the currency. So as the source details, we are seeing significant manipulation attempts, or let's call them containment measures.
The source mentioned margin hikes. Now, for the listener who doesn't trade futures, can you explain this? It sounds like casino rules to me.
It is very similar to casino rules.
Yeah.
So when you trade silver on the COMEX, the commodities exchange, most people aren't buying the metal. They are buying a contract that represents the metal, and you don't have to pay full price.
You put down a deposit.
You just put up a deposit called a margin.
Like putting a down payment on a house, but you're just betting on the price of the house.
Exactly. Let's say you only need to put down $10,000 to control $100,000 worth of silver. That's leverage. But when the price starts spiking, the COMEX can suddenly say, hey, we are raising the margin requirement. You now need to put down $20,000.
So they change the rules in the middle of the game, just like that.
They do. And they say it's to ensure market stability. But practically what it does is force the smaller players out. The speculators who are leveraged to the hilt can't afford the new deposit. They have to sell their position.
Which should, in theory, cause a sell-off and cool the price down.
Theoretically. It's a way to shake out the little guys and stop the momentum.
Is it working?
Right. And that's the fascinating part. The source notes that despite these hikes, the price is still ripping higher. It's like trying to put out a forest fire with a garden hose. The demand is so strong that the usual tricks aren't working.
They also mentioned a new product being introduced, a 100-ounce contract. Is that another sort of distraction technique?
It seems so. It's likely designed to absorb retail demand. By offering a smaller contract, they might be trying to create a sandbox for retail money to play in, keeping them away from the massive short positions held by the banks.
It fragments the demand.
It fragments the demand, exactly. But again, these are defensive moves. You don't build sandbags unless you are worried about a flood.
And speaking of floods, we have to talk about this concept of backwardation. I'll be honest, every time I see this word in an economic textbook, my eyes glaze over. It sounds incredibly technical.
It does.
But the way it's described in the source, it sounds like a flashing red danger sign.
It is the single most important technical signal we have right now. It's the market screaming at you.
So help me out here. In plain English, why should I care if the market is backward?
Okay, let's try an analogy. Let's imagine you want to buy concert tickets for a huge show next month. In a normal world, buying a ticket today for a show next month might cost a little more than the face value because you're paying for the convenience, right?
Sure, makes sense.
In commodities, it's usually the opposite. We have a condition called contango. Basically, silver for delivery next month should cost more than silver today.
Why?
Because if I sell you silver next month, I have to store it, insure it, and guard it for those 30 days. I pass those costs on to you.
That makes perfect sense. Storage costs money, so future silver is more expensive than current silver.
Exactly. That is a healthy, normal market. But backwardation flips that completely upside down. It means traders are willing to pay more for silver right now today than for silver next month.
Why would they do that? Why pay a premium just to have it now?
Fear, pure and simple. It means the market doesn't trust that the silver will actually be available next month.
So they think the vaults might be empty later.
Right. It's like standing in line for that concert, offering the guy in front of you double the price for his ticket because you are terrified the venue is going to run out of seats before you get to the window. You want it now.
So when we see backwardation in the futures market, that's the smart money panic buying.
It's the smart money screaming, give it to me now. I don't want a promise. I want the metal. And according to the source, traders are pulling futures contracts backward into the current month standing for delivery at a rate of roughly 5,000 contracts a day.
5,000 contracts a day. That is a massive amount of physical metal being demanded, isn't it?
It is. I mean, standing for delivery is a hassle. You have to arrange armored transport. You have to have a secure vault. You don't do it unless you really, really need the physical asset immediately.
It implies they believe a shortage is imminent.
It screams it.
And that fear seems justified when you look at the international picture. The source mentions something called the China premium.
Yes, this is another huge piece of the puzzle. Silver in China was trading significantly higher than in the U.S. At one point, there was a $10 gap per ounce.
A $10 gap.
And gold was trading at a $100 premium over the spot price.
So gold was $100 more expensive in Shanghai than in New York?
Correct. And in a global market, that creates arbitrage. Metal flows to where the price is highest. So you have this massive vacuum sucking physical metal out of London and New York and sending it east to China.
The source mentioned that London vaults are being drained.
They are. ETFs and investors were gobbling up what the source calls free silver in London. So you combine the drain in London, the high premiums in China, and the backwardation in the futures market. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it points toward a squeeze.
A squeeze, meaning we literally run out of physical metal to back up the paper contracts.
Potentially.
Yeah.
The expert in our source calls it unobtainium. If a true physical shortage hits, the paper price on the screen becomes irrelevant.
What do you mean irrelevant?
It doesn't matter if the chart says silver is $90. If you can't find any to buy, the real price is, well, whatever someone is willing to sell it for.
Yeah.
It becomes bid only.
Which is both terrifying and exciting. But wait, there is a paradox here I need you to untangle for me. We just spent 10 minutes talking about a shortage, unobtainium, empty vaults. But then I look at the notes and it says there is a refinery glut.
Ah, yes, the glut.
A glut means too much, right? So how can we be running out of silver if the refiners are swimming in it? That sounds completely contradictory.
It does sound like a contradiction, but it's actually a bottleneck issue. It comes down to the difference between scrap and product.
Walk me through that. What's the difference?
Okay. Because the price hit $94,
Yep.
What is the average person doing? They're looking at that old jewelry box. They're finding grandma's old silverware that they never use. They're finding broken necklaces.
They're raiding the attic.
They're raiding the attic. Dealers are buying gold-plated items just to melt them down.
The source mentioned that buying heavy gold plate at silver prices just to get the gold out.
Exactly. So all of this scrap, old forks, broken chains, industrial waste is flooding into the refiners. The refiners are physically full of this stuff. They have piles of it.
Okay, so they have piles of old silver. That's the glut.
You can't sell a pile of old forks on the COMEX. You can't sell a melted blob of jewelry to an investor who wants a pristine coin. It has to be refined, purified to 0.999 fine, assayed, and mended into a bar or a coin.
And that takes machinery and
Yeah.
time.
It takes machinery, it takes time, and it takes labor. The refiners are at capacity. They cannot convert the scrap into investment-grade product fast enough. So we have a glut of raw material entering the back door.
But a shortage of finished bars coming out the front door?
Precisely.
That explains the premiums then. The source mentioned generic bars selling for $9 or $10 over the spot price.
Correct. The spot price is for the raw metal. But if you want the finished product, the bar, you have to pay for the scarcity of the fabrication capacity. It's a supply chain problem.
It's amazing to think about people scraping together tiny clasps and family heirlooms to sell. It feels like a gold rush in reverse, people mining their own homes.
It really is. It indicates a desperate scramble for liquidity on one side and a desperate scramble for hard assets on the other, a real tale of two markets.
Now, let's talk about the consumer side of this, because if you are a regular person trying to buy silver right now, this market looks very different than it did 2 years ago.
That's completely different.
The source material brings up a really interesting psychological barrier, the $100 bill.
Yes, this is a huge shift. For decades, silver was known as the poor man's gold.
Right.
You could walk into a coin shop with 20 bucks, maybe skip lunch, and buy an ounce of silver. It was accessible. It was pocket change.
But when silver hits $94 and is knocking on the door of 100, suddenly it's not pocket change.
You know, the casual buyer who used to pick up 3 or 4 ounces every payday can now maybe afford one. Or once you add the taxes and that $10 premium we talked about, maybe they can't even afford 1 ounce.
So what happens? Does the little guy just leave the market? Does he get priced out?
No, the market adapts.
Yeah.
We are seeing a massive shift toward fractionals. Half-ounce coins, quarter-ounce coins, even 1/10 ounce silver rounds.
A 1/10 ounce silver coin, that's got to be tiny, like a dime.
Very small. But it's necessary to keep the metal accessible to everyone. The source mentions companies like Kinesis developing new designs for smaller denominations and the rise of gold-backed style notes, which are essentially bills with a thin layer of gold or silver in them.
But there's another reason for fractionals, right? It's not just about affordability for the buyer. The expert in the source, Rob, he gave this piece of advice that I thought was brilliant.
About liquidity.
Exactly. He said, if gold hits $10,000 an ounce, good luck selling a 1 ounce coin.
That is a very practical, very real problem. Let's play that out. You have 1 ounce gold coin. Gold goes to $10,000. You want to sell it to pay some bills. You walk into your local coin shop.
And the guy behind the counter has to have 10 grand in cash lying around to buy it for me, which he probably doesn't.
Exactly. Most small shops don't keep that kind of cash in the register. It becomes a security risk. So your highly valuable asset becomes illiquid because it's too valuable. You can't break it. You can't sell half of it.
So having 10 1/10 ounce coins is actually safer or more useful than having one big coin.
Much safer, much more liquid. It mirrors what we see in historical hyperinflation events.
Yeah.
When a currency collapses, people start using smaller and smaller bits of gold and silver for daily transactions, buying bread, buying gas.
Yeah.
The market naturally breaks the asset down into usable units.
The fact that we are seeing this shift to fractionals now is a signal.
It's a signal that people are preparing for much higher prices, or at least the market is structurally preparing for it. It's future-proofing your stack.
Speaking of psychology and preparing, I have to share this story from the source. It's the angry customer parable. I think every listener needs to hear this because it's such a lesson in patience.
Oh, I love this story.
And frankly, it's just a great story.
It's a tragedy and a triumph all at once.
So let's set the scene. The host recounts a story from about 2.5 years ago. A customer walks into the sovereign exchange and he is not happy. He is fuming.
Right. He's had it. He's at his breaking point.
Totally. He's carrying a monster box of silver maples. Now, for those who haven't lifted one, a monster box is a heavy blue plastic crate containing 500 ounces of silver. It's serious weight.
It's an investment level quantity, not a casual purchase.
So he slams this box on the counter. Silver was stuck at around $21 an ounce at the time. And he was yelling, "Silver isn't going anywhere. It's a pet rock. I want to trade this for platinum because platinum is actually moving."
He capitulated. The market had bored him to death. He watched the stock market rip. He watched crypto go to the moon, and his silver just sat there doing nothing. He felt like a fool.
But here is the picker. Rob, the dealer, couldn't do the trade. Platinum was scarce at the time, or he just didn't have the stock. So the guy, probably cursing under his breath, had to pick up his heavy box of silver and go home.
He was forced to keep the asset he hated.
And that forced patience made him a fortune.
A small fortune.
Let's do the math on that. If he had sold at $21,
Yeah.
that box was worth roughly $10,500. Today, with silver at 93 or 94.
That box is worth roughly $46,000, maybe $47,000.
He quadrupled his money, nearly a 4.5x return, by doing absolutely nothing, by failing to sell.
And that is the lesson of the super capital rotation. It doesn't happen overnight. It grinds and grinds. It tests your patience. It makes you bored. And then when the dam breaks, it snaps.
And if you let your emotions drive the trade,
You sell the boredom right before the explosion.
it makes you wonder how many people sold at $25 or $30 thinking, finally I broke even, only to watch it rocket to 90 a month later.
Many, I'm sure. And the regret must be immense, especially when you look at the future predictions mentioned in the source. Bank of America has a target of $309.
Which is already mind-boggling.
And then David Morgan is speculating about $600 silver.
Wait, pause there. $600 silver. That sounds insane. That sounds like internet hype. I mean, we are at 90. 600 is, that's a different world. Is that actually realistic?
In normal times, no, not at all. But are we in normal times? If we are seeing a true currency crisis or a true super capital rotation, then the price in dollars becomes almost meaningless.
What do you mean by that?
As the source warns, at $600 an ounce, you aren't looking for profit in the traditional sense.
You're not trying to get rich.
No. If silver is $600, you have to ask yourself, what does a loaf of bread cost? What does a gallon of gas cost? You aren't holding the metal to get rich in dollars. You are holding it to survive the devaluation of the dollar. You are preserving purchasing power.
That's a sobering thought. It's not that silver is worth more, it's that the dollar is worth less. Dramatically less.
Exactly. In a hyperinflationary scenario, you might be a millionaire on paper, but you might only be able to buy a used car with that million. The silver just ensures you can still buy the car.
So what does this all mean for us right now? We have the price explosion. We have the backwardation signaling a shortage. We have the refinery glut signaling a scrap frenzy. We have the shift to fractionals. It feels like we are in the middle of a historic event.
We are. The key takeaway from these sources is that we are witnessing a decoupling. Physical demand is overwhelming the paper manipulation games.
The usual tricks aren't working.
The big boys are raising margins and creating new products to try to stem the tide, but the water is rising too fast.
And the retail public, the restaurant crowd, is just waking up.
That's the wild card. The mania phase hasn't even fully hit yet. We are seeing the early adopters of the general public. When the real herd arrives, when the guy who runs the restaurant and his entire staff all want silver at the same time, and they find out that the refiners are backed up and the vaults are empty.
That's when things get truly unpredictable.
That's when you get the vertical price chart.
So the infrastructure, the mints, the refiners, that is the choke point to watch.
Absolutely. Watch the premiums. If the price of silver is $100, but you have to pay $150 to actually get a coin, that tells you everything you need to know about the real value of the metal.
It's a fascinating, fast-moving situation. And to think this conversation in the source material happened right on the floor of the exchange, surrounded by people buying gold clasps and selling scrap, it really grounds it in reality. This isn't theoretical economics.
No, it's happening in strip malls and coin shops right now. It is history being written in the order books.
I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on. The source mentioned that in previous fiat collapses, gold and silver acted as the accounting measure, the report card for the currency.
Yes.
If we are truly seeing a super capital rotation where trillions of dollars flee into metals, we have to ask, what happens to the assets being rotated out of? If everyone is selling bonds to buy silver, who is buying the bonds?
And at what price?
And if silver goes to $600, what does that say about the cash in your savings account?
That is the ultimate question. In a rotation, there are winners and there are losers. The purchasing power doesn't disappear, it just moves. You want to make sure you are standing where it's moving to, not where it's moving from.
Something to mull over as you check your portfolio. And hey, keep your eyes on the spot price and seriously go check your couch cushions for any loose gold clasps or broken chains. Apparently, they're worth a lot more than you think right now.
Indeed. Don't throw anything away until you check the spot price. You might be surprised.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the silver frenzy. It's going to be an interesting few weeks. We'll catch you on the next one.
This is The Real Story with Michelle McCory.
Hello, I'm Michelle McCory. Thank you for joining us here on The Real Story, where we go beyond the headlines, beneath the surface, and behind the curtain to show you what is really happening with money, markets, and power. And silver was one of the best performing assets last year, up nearly 150%, decisively outperforming the broader equity markets, bonds, and even gold. And just weeks into the new year, that momentum is continuing, with silver rising above $90 an ounce. The metal is already up nearly 30% year to date. And this rally that has caught the attention of investors, institutional and retail, industrial users, and governments looks set to continue. What was once dismissed as a volatile niche metal is now back at the center of the global conversation, and not just because of speculation, but because of structural forces that have been building for years. Silver is far more than just a precious metal. It is a critical industrial metal, essential for solar panels, electrification, defense systems, AI, semiconductors, and data infrastructure. And it is also a monetary metal. It has been for over 5,000 years, and it is now re-emerging as a monetary metal at a time when confidence in fiat currencies is increasingly fragile. Now, despite the dramatic price moves that we've seen so far, up over 180% year over year, many analysts argue that silver is still undervalued in real terms. In fact, adjusted for inflation, silver has yet to reclaim its historical highs, which would now be around $200 an ounce. And that is using the government inflation data, which you could argue is way, way off. So are we witnessing the early stages of a long-term repricing, or perhaps the later innings of a cycle that's already run a little too far, too quickly? Where is silver headed next? Well, let's now get the perspective of Steve Penny, founder of Silver Chartist. Steve is a technical analyst known for taking a long-term, disciplined approach to precious metals, with a particular focus, of course, on silver, gold, uranium, and platinum. Steve is a retired Air Force combat rescue pilot. He left the military to start silverchartist.com in 2020. It has since grown into a thriving community of thousands of precious metals and hard asset investors and speculators. Now, Steve studies multi-decade charts, ratio relationships, and market structure to understand how investors should navigate volatility, risk, and opportunity. Steve, so good to have you with us. Welcome.
You bet. Michelle, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that kind introduction. I've been following you for a very long time, so it's great to finally connect. Thank you.
Yeah, it is great to connect, and it is a very interesting time to be talking about silver, and who better than the Silver Chartist to help us break down what's going on. So look, as I mentioned, this time last year, silver was at around $31 an ounce. It is now hovering not that far from $100. We hit $93. We pulled back to the 90s. High 80s, the triple digit silver, though, that we've been talking about for years, is very much in sight. So I would like to start with the big picture here, Steve. Silver up over 180% year over year. Big picture, what is driving this rally?
Yeah, there's certainly a combination of factors that are driving this rally, which would account for its rapid ascent. I mean, I don't know of anyone who expected this fast of a move. I was looking for $50 silver towards the end of last year, so it has exceeded my expectations on this particular move. But although I do think we're ultimately heading higher. So you asked, what is driving this metals rally? Well, first and foremost, silver and gold are money. And over millennia, silver and gold do a full accounting for the expansion of debt-based fiat currencies. And in this type of environment where the whole world is on a global debt-based fiat currency standard, silver and gold are the prime beneficiaries of this exact environment. So ultimately, I think we're headed much higher in price, although I distinguish between kind of prudent people looking to use silver and gold as portfolio insurance and those speculating for short-term gains. So to the short-term speculators here, I would say this is not a low-risk entry point. However, for those looking for long-term portfolio insurance against these out-of-control central planners and central bankers, I would say having some exposure here certainly makes sense. And I think ultimately we're headed much higher, and I could describe some of those targets for you if you'd like.
Before we get into the targets again, I just want to give some of our viewers that are new to the space more of a background here. And we have a number of factors driving silver higher. We've got that persistent structural supply deficit. Silver hasn't really balanced supply and demand for years. You could say that. Demand, especially from industrial users and investors, has regularly outpaced total supply, creating what many are saying is a multi-year deficit. And that deficit is a big part of why prices have climbed sharply, especially, Steve, when you look at the industrial demand explosion, because silver is not just a precious metal. More than half of global silver demand comes from industry, solar panels, electric vehicles, electronics, AI, hardware, medical devices, microchips. And growth in these sectors has continued to tighten the physical market and squeeze inventory. So talk us through a little bit about what we're seeing with that supply squeeze, with that increasing industrial demand and the diminishing physical supply.
Yeah, I love this question because I like to go back to the basics. So I separate what is the primary driver, and then I look at other things as upside kickers, and all of them are kind of converging right now. So looking at the primary driver, as I said, silver and gold are money. And when I look at the United States, and really all developed countries around the world are in a very similar situation, but let's use the United States as an example here. We're approaching a $40 trillion national debt. When you include unfunded contingent liabilities, I would argue that those liabilities and debts are mathematically impossible to repay. So the governments and central planners around the world, but here in the United States, have two choices. They can default honestly, tell grandma, grandpa, sorry, you know what, that Social Security Trust Fund, it's actually filled with IOUs and there's no money there. They're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. So throughout all of history, when faced with this dilemma, what central planners and governments do is they debase the currency. That's just what happens. So they're going to choose inflation. And the reason they're going to choose inflation is because the public doesn't understand it. If they default honestly, who's going to get blamed? The politicians. If they default through inflation by debasing the currency, people don't understand that. They blame the stores, they blame the shop owners, the companies for raising their prices, when the root of the problem is out of control governments spending beyond what the tax base can support. So with a $40 trillion national debt, problems have solutions, predicaments have managed outcomes. There's no solution to this problem. There's only different managed outcomes. And I think all of the different potential outcomes in this scenario are beneficial for silver and gold. So ultimately, I think we're going much higher. The 1970s is a great analog for this current bull market. Although back in the 1970s, they had a Paul Volcker come in and raise interest rates up close to 20%. Can't do that this time around with a $40 trillion debt, as the slightest uptick in interest rates would begin to consume 100% of federal tax receipts. So you can see the predicament as opposed to the problem.
Right. And, to your point about the interest rate backdrop, I mean, that certainly matters. Markets are increasingly pricing in an environment where real rates are constrained. Future rate cuts are very, very, very likely. We've got lower yields reducing the opportunity cost of holding precious metals, which has always been one of the arguments against holding precious metals. But we've got capital flows are reinforcing the move. We've got exchange traded products and physical investment demand picking up meaningfully. And we've also got this growing disconnect between paper markets and physical reality, as I like to emphasize. The futures and the derivatives still dominating price discovery, but physical silver availability is becoming increasingly strained. And we also have this situation where, silver still is a little cheap compared to gold, and people are looking to move into hard assets. I want to break all of that down. But before we get into some of your charts here, I do want to focus on something that we've seen recently, and that is the Shanghai premium, right? Because we have this, what many are saying is a very important signal in the silver market right now. It's happening. We have physical silver in Shanghai trading noticeably higher than in the West. So silver has now traded above $100 an ounce on the Shanghai Futures Physical Exchange, even as prices in London and in New York remain closer to that $90 range. So that puts Shanghai at roughly a $10 premium to Western markets. And that's huge, right? I mean, when you look at that kind of premium in the commodities market, that is a big premium in historical commodity standards. So what does that tell you? This has been consistent as well, Steve. So what does it tell you when we're seeing this Shanghai premium?
Well, I think what's beginning to happen, what's happening before our eyes, is the physical metal, supply and demand for physical metal is beginning to set the price. Where up until very recently, price was set by supply and demand of contracts, paper contracts being sold on the commodities exchange. So they were able to synthetically print extra contracts that weren't necessarily backed by physical silver. So that would explain some of this arbitrage, this $10 plus premium in Shanghai. Shanghai, the people in the East, they want physical metal. Here in the West, we've been content to trade in paper contracts for the physical. So that demand for physical is beginning to set the price. And I think that reflects more of a true price discovery mechanism over in China right now. I saw the Shanghai futures get up to $105 the other day. So we've already seen triple digit silver over there. And one thing that's interesting, I look at the Commitment of Traders report every week. I met Jim Sinclair, Mr. Gold himself, back in 2013. And one of the things he told me is that when silver and gold have their big moves, you can bet your bottom dollar the bankers will be on the right side of that. And the way we track that is the Commitment of Traders report. And what's very interesting here in the silver COT is open interest is very low. That shows that these bankers who have been quick to short these kind of rallies are not playing that game anymore. Their net short position is relatively small, especially considering the kind of price rise we've had. So something is very different. And it looks to me that this kind of manipulation game in the paper markets, especially in the COMEX, is beginning to come to an end. And this actual supply and demand price is beginning, true price discovery is beginning to happen. And we're seeing that in Shanghai.
Right, true price discovery. We've touched on some of the macro fundamentals here, but Steve, ultimately you're a chart guy, right? You're a technical analyst, you're a chart guy. So talk us through the silver charts. What are you seeing? What does it tell you where we are in the current cycle?
Yeah, I like to, one of my sayings is I like to say, fundamentals tell me what to buy. Technicals tell me what to buy and when to sell, or I should say when to buy and when to sell. So the fundamentals are the reason I speculate and invest in precious metals, but the technicals can give you an advantage on entry points and exit points. And I'll go ahead and share my screen here, and I'll pull up what I call the mother of all cup and handle patterns in silver. You don't have to be an expert in technical analysis to see this pattern. The cup and handle pattern is one of the most common patterns in technical analysis, and this is the biggest cup and handle pattern I have ever seen in my entire life. And it goes back to the peak in 1980, got up to about, let's call it $50. It took all the way till 2011 to get back to 50. It failed, so that's the cup portion. And then you've got this handle portion. This was a 10-year handle portion from 2011 right up until 2025. And what happened this time? We punched right through it. That is the biggest breakout I've ever seen in my life. And I chart hundreds of different equities and ETFs and instruments. And typically, the way you get a conservative measured market move is to take this cup portion and flip it over. So $50 would be called the neckline here. That's the resistance. And the low here was $4. So the difference is what? $46. So you add 46 onto 50, that gives you a measured move target of $96. And that's pretty conservative. And I think, we're just within spitting distance of that now, within a few percent of $96. That's my initial target. You could certainly make a case for higher targets on this move. One thing that's interesting is going back to the 1970s bull market, you had huge parabolic runs that came in 3-month spurts. And those spurts began with an extreme overbought condition. For example, in 1979, going into November 1979, silver was extreme overbought. It had already had a big run, and it was like $16. Well, it went from 16 to 48 in 3 short months: November, December, January. 3 months, triple in the price from extreme overbought conditions. So there is precedent for more upside on this move. Although, like I said, this is not a low risk entry point for speculators and traders, but for those looking to stack metal who have a longer term time horizon, that's a different perspective. When you zero in, go ahead, Michelle.
No, you finish that thought.
Sure, yeah, and just looking at the daily chart here, I like to go big to small. You can see 93.70, that was the intraday peak from yesterday. That's using the futures price, and 93.70, and we're rising within the confines of this trend channel. Now, I know a lot of people are they don't follow charts and they're not technical analysts. I keep mine very simple. And you say, well, why do I care about these lines on a chart? Some people may say. Well, I would say because institutional money, hedge fund managers, institutions, trading algorithms all use these simple technical tools. And they allow you to make if-then statements and to identify high-risk entry points and low-risk entry points, and the same for exit points. So that's how charts can be used as a simple tool. They're not the end-all, be-all, but they do allow you to manage risk in this type of environment. All
right, let's go to that $96 level. What does that actually signal to you? Do you think that that's the top for this run? What is the emphasis on the 96?
Well, to me, that's the target. So once I've reached a target, I wear a long-term hat and a trading hat, right? So I want to be careful who I talk to here. For most people, if you're just a long-term investor, it doesn't really mean anything to you. It means maybe, you kind of, if you're looking for a spot to add, that's not an ideal spot because it represents a place where we may get a pullback, and it's just a target. Using the 1970s as an analog, I think that we are near a 1974 moment where this is kind of an intermediate top. I think we're approaching an intermediate top here. I expect some kind of pullback soon, but I don't think that's the end. I think we're likely going to have some kind of deflationary impulse, some kind of panic in the next few months, maybe next couple of years. I think it's sooner rather than later. And the metals will probably be hit on that panic-driven sell-off. That's typically what happens. But what I think is it'll be the Fed's response to the next deflationary impulse, the next panic that sends silver well into the triple digits for good, gold north of $10,000. It'll be the Fed's response to that next panic. I think we'll see quantitative easing, debt monetization, currency creation, stimulus checks, the likes of which we've never seen before. And that's still to come. I think that's the ultimate catalyst. So caution is warranted over the short term here. So that's speaking to the traders and short-term speculators. But to the long-term investors, I would say hang on. It's going to be a wild ride, lots of ups and downs, but higher targets await.
Why would 96 be the target if we're already seeing, as we discussed earlier, triple digit in Shanghai? I mean, I get that that's what the cup and handle pattern is saying, but haven't we sort of exceeded that already if we look at what's happening with physical silver demand out east?
Sure, absolutely. You could certainly make a case for higher targets. So as like a trader and investor, my goal is to manage risk. So if I have a time frame over the next few months or a few weeks even, well, the risk reward ratio over the next few weeks is diminished up near 96. Technical analysis becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So just because if we see that obvious cup and handle pattern, so do the trading algorithms, so do the institutions, so do the people who are short-term traders on Wall Street who look at such things. And they're likely, it represents an area where they are likely to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take some profit here. But that's more of a short-term phenomenon. But there is precedent for a move higher. I'm not saying 96 has to be the top. Like I said, in 1979, we tripled in 3 short months. If you triple from $54 silver, well, that gives you a target of 162. So it could certainly go higher. It's just the risk reward ratio over the short term is not so favorable. However, it depends on your time frame and what your objective is.
I like going back to history. I always like to make comparisons. That you brought up the 1970s, right? Now, silver didn't explode randomly. That responded to a structural breakdown similar to some of the factors we're seeing now between 1971 and the late 1970s. We had the U.S. abandoning gold convertibility in 1971 under President Nixon, so the dollar became pure fiat. Inflation surged, CPI ran into double digits by the late 1970s, confidence in paper assets eroded. We had oil shocks, geopolitical instability, loose monetary policy until Volcker stepped in 1979, to your point, and then we had double-digit interest rate hikes. And silver, unlike gold at that point, had already been largely demonetized. So just as a recap for our viewers, in 1971, we had silver trading at around $150 per ounce. 1974, it hit $6. Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way. January 1980, it reached $49.45 intraday. And that was a 30x move in under a decade. Now, many would say that part of the accelerant there was the Hunt brothers. That late stage explosion was driven by the Hunt brothers, who, for reference to our viewers who are not familiar, were Texas oil billionaires who believed correctly that inflation would have a very strong impact on the dollar. They bought massive amounts of physical silver, accumulated enormous futures position. They attempted to corner the market, a thin market that arguably the governments had neglected. And I believe at the peak, they controlled or influenced roughly 1/3 of the world's deliverable silver supply. And that pushed prices into that vertical ascent in the late 1979. But here is the point of this question. Because the rules were changed mid-game. We had intervention there. As silver prices exploded, the exchanges panicked. In January 1980, the COMEX changed margin requirements repeatedly. Trading was restricted to liquidation only. No new long positions were allowed. So this was not a free market response. We had institutional intervention to stop price discovery. And we had silver effectively collapsing from nearly $50 to under $11 in weeks, and the Hunt brothers were destroyed financially. For those who believe that markets are fair, this is clearly something that would cure them of that delusion. But here's my point. Why would we not see some kind of intervention like this again? And I get that as a technical chartist, that's not necessarily something that you're looking at, but could that be a factor that derails us if we look at how history behaved in the past? Silver points to it embarrasses policymakers when silver moves like that. There's also been concern that you need a lower silver price for military-industrial complex, that the silver price has been suppressed. Could we see the rules changed again? Is that something that you're considering?
Yes, absolutely. I think about that all the time. It is so easy to focus on all of the bullish catalysts, and I'm firmly in that camp. I'm as much of a silver bull as you can possibly find. However, it would be negligent to not look at all the risks. And when you think about owning physical silver and gold, you're almost, in a sense, taking on the establishment opponent, the whole Wall Street banking system, central bankers. You're competing with their currency that they can create out of thin air. So there's always those risks, and never underestimate what these central planners will do when to keep kicking the can down the road. And I even think back to 1971. You talked about Nixon took us off the gold standard. Perfect analogy to where we are at today. We just came off that Vietnam War. They had done massive deficit spending, and we were on a gold standard. So they were constrained with how much currency they could create. So France said, hey, I want my gold back. I'd rather have the gold. Here's your dollars. I'll take the gold. What did they do? They changed the rules of the game. They said, nope, you can't redeem your dollars for gold anymore. Ended that process. It was supposedly temporary. Then what happened? Gold had its big run, right? So did silver. And then what happened in 1973? There was a conflict in the Middle East. There was an oil embargo. There was oil lines to go get gas. And what happened? They changed the rules of the game again. They sent Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State, over to the Middle East, and he negotiated what's known as the petrodollar system, where now OPEC, namely Saudi Arabia, sells its oil in dollars, creating worldwide demand for dollars, which there wasn't anymore because it wasn't gold-backed, in exchange for defense of Saudi Arabia and other Sunni OPEC states. So they changed the rules of the game. Then they did it again in 1980. Will they do it again? I think they'll try. I think ultimately free market forces ultimately win. All attempts at manipulation fail. Silver and gold always do that full accounting. But man, you can bet your bottom dollar. I think those in power are going to do everything they can to preserve the current status quo. So that is a risk, and that's the risk. That's why I don't go all in on silver or gold. I used to think that way, 10, 15 years ago when I learned all this stuff. I'm going all in. Why would I do anything else? Well, it's some of these risks you're talking about. So those are important to think about. That's why I think, you decide on your healthy allocation, but I don't think 100% is the answer, although that could be tempting.
All right, but let's talk about what we're seeing with this current move. How does the volume on this breakout compare to prior silver breakouts? And what does that tell us?
Yeah, it's coming on massive volume. So volume is a confirming signal. When you see price break out, my eyes immediately go to the bottom of the chart and you see volume. And that tells me there's big interest. So what does that tell us? Well, this isn't the normal people who've been playing in the gold and silver markets for the last 10 years. New participants are coming in. And I think generalist investors, institutions are noticing, number one, the Dow gold ratio and the silver Dow ratio. In other words, precious metals are beginning to outperform general equities, not just by a little bit, by a wide margin. And that catches the attention of generalist investors, high net worth individuals and institutions. And maybe they don't understand debt-based fiat currency and central plan, the Federal Reserve System. Well, they just see general outperformance and they come in and chase. And ultimately, I think, there's a lot of weak-handed momentum chasers that are in this market right now that don't understand the fundamentals. And those people typically have to be shaken loose before you get the next push higher, which is another reason short-term caution may be warranted.
So let's pull up some of your charts. What would a healthy consolidation level look like on your chart?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's solid support right around $60 on silver. And I'll pull that up right here now. Not necessarily predicting that, but one thing charts allow you to do is make if-then statements. If this happens, then this will happen. So if we get a pullback to 82.67, that's initial support. You can see that's pretty obvious, but that's not much of a pullback. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us pull back to this $70 level. That would be, a 20+% pullback from the recent peak. And I think that would be enough to shake loose a lot of these kind of day traders who maybe hopped in lately or just see the momentum. The people are switching from crypto over to precious metals because it's moving. I think those people need to be shaken loose. So you got support down here at 69.26. And then just a very simple strategy is these moving averages. Very simple. Here's the 50-day moving average and the 200. The 50 is in blue, the yellow is in yellow. So a simple strategy would be to say, hey, on a pullback to the blue 50-day moving average, that's a pretty low risk entry point. And then in the unlikely event we pull back to the yellow 200-day moving average, well, that becomes a even better risk reward setup if then statements. So I think solid support at 70, unlikely we dip below there, but if we do, rock solid support down here at 60.
Well, what do you see pulling us back to 60? What could that be?
Well, three things. One would just be normal profit taking from these momentum chasers who don't have that conviction to hold on to, $150, $200 silver. If you're just a day trader and you're seeing these kind of gains, it's normal to push the sell button. Number two would be some kind of panic-driven sell-off. I meant to pull up a dollar chart. I don't have it. But if you look at a long-term chart of the dollar, it is rising within an uptrend. Now, I am fundamentally bearish on the dollar. However, technically, it's reasonable to expect counter-trend rallies. And right now, when everyone is on one side of the boat, everyone's bearish on the dollar, I would not be surprised to see a bounce, a temporary bounce, but it could be some kind of panic-driven sell-off. Now, the catalysts out there there's a plethora of them. It could be some kind of crisis in Japan. Japan is on the brink right now, and they're further along in their debt spiral than us. Well, as the Japanese yen tanks, the dollar index is it's 6 different fiat currencies measured against each other. So if the yen falls and the euro falls, well, that gives the impression of strength for the dollar. Not that it's actually fundamentally strong, but that could cause the dollar to rise. And then what do those algorithms do? They sell silver and gold. I'm not necessarily predicting these things, but they're risks for a short-term pullback. Bounce in the dollar, normal profit taking, or any other exogenous event.
So temporary strength in the dollar as compared to other fiat currencies.
Correct.
If I'm understanding you correctly. So it doesn't actually ultimately change the fundamentals of a debased, devalued fiat currency losing purchasing power, which is one of the fundamental drivers of this move into hard assets, especially monetary ones like silver and gold. You're just saying that would be a potential temporary derailing factor, if I'm understanding you.
100%. For those who are new, when you look at the dollar index, it's not really strict. It's just comparing it against other fiat currencies, a basket of, I think, 6 or 7 fiat currencies. And in my mind, here's how I picture it. They're all falling. And sometimes, one's falling faster than the other. And it looks like this one that's falling slower is actually gaining. Well, it's not. It's still falling. It's just falling slower. So if the dollar were to gain on the dollar index, that would just be a temporary period where it's falling slower than the other currencies. They're all on a trajectory towards their intrinsic value, which is 0. All money returns to its intrinsic value at some point. And, that would just be, to your point, strength against other fiat currencies.
So I get that long term, you're still very, very bullish, even though you do see a pullback. Give me your best bull case scenario for silver. We'll go with like mid 2026.
Okay, I like it. Here's the bull case. So the average bull market runs about 10 years. If you look at the 1970s bull market and call it from 2000 to 2011, the average length was just about 10 years. I marked the beginning of this one in January of 2016. That was the first time Janet Yellen raised interest rates in a very long time. Gold had bottomed at $1,000. So let's count that as the beginning of this bull market. Fast forward 10 years, 2026. That's easy math. So that's the average of the previous two bull markets. Well, what's the average return for gold over the previous 2 bull markets? Well, it would be about 15x. So we started this bull market at $1,045. Let's call it 1,000 for easy math. Well, that's a $15,000 target. And remember, that's just the average of the previous 2 bull markets. So you can certainly make a case for much higher targets in the fullness of this bull market, and I expect that. I don't expect a muted replay. I expect an amplified replay of the previous 2 bull markets. But let's just use $15,000 as a target. Well, I think 50 to 1 gold silver ratio, again, is very conservative. The 1980s bull market peaked at 15 to 1. 2011, we peaked at 30 to 1. Let's just say we only go to 50 to 1, which we're there right now, by the way. 50 to 1 using a $15,000 gold price gives you a target of $300 silver. So I think $15,000 gold, $300 silver are very reasonable targets that are not pie in the sky. A few months ago, even $300 silver seemed like, oh, Steve, you're just pulling numbers out of thin air. No, those are data-driven forecasts, and I think we could even potentially exceed those.
$300 silver by when?
Well, the average gives you 2026. I don't expect 2026 to see $300 silver. It is possible, but I think we see a pullback, and let's say sometime this decade in the next 4 years. I think that's very reasonable. I think it'll probably happen sooner, but let's just say to give myself a window there, over the next 4 years by 2030. Probably.
Okay, so $300 silver by 2030 is your very conservative estimate, yeah, and $15,000 gold by the same timeline?
I do, yeah. Yeah, they typically peak right around the same time, silver and gold.
When you're looking at the current levels, is silver still cheap relative to gold? Are you looking at selling silver for gold? How are you playing the gold silver ratio right now?
Yeah, leveraging that gold silver ratio to your advantage is a way to amplify returns over the course of a bull market while maintaining exposure. So that's something, if you want to add one simple level of complexity, it's something everyone can do. I'm not recommending people do that. A lot of people just want to do half and half and set it, forget it. Totally fine with that. But back in April, just what's that, 7, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, the gold silver ratio was 108 to 1. In other words, you could swap 1 ounce of gold for 108 ounces of silver. And I did just that. I sold gold and I bought silver and platinum. Well, now that ratio has come down to 50 to 1. And now I can trade that 1 ounce of that 108 ounces of silver back for 2 ounces of gold while I've maintained exposure to the precious metals complex the entire time. So over the last 100 years, the gold silver ratio averages between 45 and 50, right about in there. So we're pretty close to the average, but bull markets typically peak at either 15 to 1, 30 to 1, somewhere in that range. So I do expect silver to outperform gold by probably a factor of at least 2x over the remainder of this bull market. However, it's moved really far, really fast. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, a period on the next pullback where kind of, gold outperforms on a relative basis. But you can certainly use that gold silver ratio. And I did just recently swap some silver back for gold. And, I've been almost all in silver. So now I'm closer to 50-50 mix. That makes sense for me. Not advice for everyone, but I think right now a 50-50 mix at a 50 to 1 gold silver ratio can make a lot of sense.
And you say your short-term moves, you make your trades not using physical silver. So break down how you allocate physical silver in your portfolio versus the ETFs or the futures markets. Explain that to us.
Yeah, and this is not an endorsement that everyone should do what I do, but I think it's important.
Unlock the future of fiduciary operations with JusticeFund, the digital platform that reshapes judgment claims and bills of exchange into efficient digital workflows. Experience advanced claim management with automated workflows, real-time updates, and secure exchange processing. Stay ahead with comprehensive compliance and reporting tools enhanced by military-grade multi-factor authentication and end-to-end encryption. Enjoy peace of mind with our platform's 99.9% uptime and record of zero security breaches. JusticeFund seamlessly integrates into your existing technology, slashing processing time by up to 70% and cutting operational costs by 65%. Benefit from customizable dashboards, advanced analytics, and dedicated support tailored for fiduciary professionals. Rest assured knowing that JusticeFund guarantees compliance with federal, state, and international regulations. Join the revolution in fiduciary management today with JusticeFund, your partner in efficiency and security. Are you a notary looking to significantly boost your income? JusticeFund Exchange is your pathway to earning up to $35,000 per month. By combining cutting-edge legal, financial, and technological tools, we transform traditional notary roles, process high-value financial documents like digital judgment fund claims and UCC-1 financing statements for substantial commissions. Our platform leverages blockchain technology and the Uniform Commercial Code for seamless transactions. We offer comprehensive training and tools to automate, verify, and market financial instruments. Unlock a new revenue stream beyond your regular notarial services with JusticeFund Exchange. Join us today and elevate your notary business to new heights. Master the future of legal transactions with JFE Notary Chain and turn innovation into your competitive edge. Get started with the standard plan at $1,999, limited time $1,599, and unlock full curriculum access, a digital certificate, our community forum, and 3 months of instructor support. Build foundational expertise that gets you career entry-level ready faster and with confidence. Go further with premium at $2,999, limited time $2,399. Including all standard features plus 6 months extended support, 2x one-on-one mentoring sessions, access to advanced workshops, and an alumni network invite. Enjoy accelerated learning, personalized guidance, and enhanced networking to stand out in the market. Scale with our corporate solutions featuring a tailored curriculum, dedicated corporate training, bulk enrollment discounts, and white label options. Equip teams with scalable training and give your organization a decisive strategic advantage. Enroll now and join a future-focused community mastering JFE Notary Chain from day one.
All right, before we jump out of here, hey, for all my Miami fans, it's all about the you. All I'm gonna say is this: these are exciting times to be alive. You should be active in your state, in your community, in sound money. 99% of most of your financial problems result from a lack of sound money principles. So if you apply sound money on top of what you're already doing, one thing's for sure, you'll be a whole lot further, a whole lot better than where you are right now. Those of you that are active in the sound money movement, we will have a very extensive course curriculum. We're going to respect it today because it's MLK Day. So I ain't going to overwhelm everybody. I'm just going to let everybody, catch up, catch their breath. But starting as early as 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, because there's something that's getting ready to definitely break out in the foreign exchange, in the metals market, and it's going to start approximately about 2 p.m. Actually 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to follow it, bring it in real time, and we're going to be ready to basically put you exactly where you and your family needs to be. So right now, if you hadn't already, please reserve your spot with Metallum X, put together by yours truly, your guy Lamont Mitchell, who is a proud student of ours, who is active as a gold back distributor in the state of Georgia. If your state presently does not have any legislation in place to become a gold, how can I say it, a legal tender state, right now, you got Utah, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Texas, and Arizona. Indiana, Kansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia have partial pending laws. Florida has passed legislation to recognize gold and silver as legal tender and is subject to implementation. This will kick off on July 1st. So we're very, very, very busy here in the state of Florida to make sure that we are ready. It is about getting your hands on sound money. I am been hard pressed by many groups to provide liquidity. That's why you see me mining crypto and this, that, and the other, because there's a whole gambit. But again, I ain't gonna overwhelm you. Just do what you got to do. Get with the person that referred you if you want more information. We will be bright and early inside of our course curriculum, which is going to kick off with how to apply these principles today in order for you to have a brighter tomorrow. With that being said, I'm going to say peace and love. Peace and love, family.